This episode of Archispeak is sponsored by
Arcat.
So we're all pretty busy, and sometimes we feel like we could use another hand to help out. Well, would you like someone to help you draw CAD details for you? How about create BIM objects for you? I know Cormac would like that, actually. Or maybe, actually, I think he'd like this better. Write specifications for you. How about...
Yeah, both.
What's that? Both of those work?
Yep.
All right.
Boring.
I
don't want to do the boring stuff. Who can do the boring stuff for me?
All right, fair enough. Well, how about if this quote-unquote assistant, there's the air quotes again, work really well on a podcast, could do all of this stuff for you for free? Well, let me tell you, Arcat is your answer. Arcat has already done all of this work for you. Doesn't that sound great? I like that idea.
I love it.
All right. So, hey, you know what? Go and search the Arcat libraries. You can find BIM, CAD, specs. Does anybody use CAD anymore? Catalogs, videos, and more. All of this content is created for you, free of charge, no registration required.
Where do I find it?
You know what? You can go find that at arcat.com, but let me finish reading the rest of the ad.
Arcat.com?
Arcat.com.
Nice.
ARCAT.com.
That's easy.
Do you always go to a site and they make you register for content?
Yes.
Hasn't that happened to you? Absolutely.
Hate that.
You know what? If you go to Arcat, you can find all you need, no registration required. So look, Arcat has created this website devoted to all of us, the building professionals. Is that what we call ourselves?
Me? Even me?
Solidarity.
Except Cormac, not actually for Cormac. You can find all this building product information fast and hassle-free. And where's that website again, Evan?
Arcat.com.
There you go.
Sorry, Arcat.com. Hey, you know that there's this show coming up that seems to be the buzz on the internets in our circles. It's called Construct. They actually sponsored our last episode. So I'm here looking constructshow.com website at the floor plan. And you know who's right at the entrance of this show floor?
Arcat.
I'll give you one guess.
Oh, I spoiled it.
Arcat. Right there. Very first show. So they didn't tell us to say this, but booth, what is it? 803 Construct 17 Arcat, the big red A, right at the front door. As usual. They are the Walmart greeters of the Construct show.
And they're sponsoring this episode of Archispeak, and
That's
we
right.
thank them very much. So go visit them.
Go see Bill and Casey at the Arcat booth at Construct.
And speaking of Construct, we're also sponsored by Hager Companies, and they're going to be at Construct at booth 907, and they're going to be highlighting their new Hager-powered Salto access control line. So Construct, September 14th and 15th in Providence, Rhode Island. Visit Hager at 907 booth, that is.
Hey, you know what else?
What's that?
I heard if you go by their booth at 907, drop your business card off in the fishbowl, make sure you write that you heard to go to their booth, an Archispeak episode 123, you get a chance to win a $200 Amazon gift card.
Well,
I'm going to be there.
You could probably drive there, right?
Guess who's driving to Rhode Island?
I know. We've got a project in Rhode Island. I'm going to go there. I'm going to drop I've got 3 boxes of extra business cards. I'm going to drop them in there.
Yeah, they don't have to be Archispeak business cards. So you're telling me that if I drop my business card in their fishbowl and it says Archispeak episode 123 on it, I could win $200 Amazon gift card?
Yeah.
That's right.
Free money for mentioning that you heard to visit their booth 907 and you write on your business card Archispeak episode 123, you're entered in to win some free dough.
Okay, wait a minute. What was this booth again?
I believe, could be wrong, 907.
Booth 907.
Yeah, who is 907 again? Hager Companies, and they're sponsoring this episode of Archispeak.
You're standing at the booth right now.
That's right. And listening to this and saying, we want to thank Hager Companies for sponsoring Archispeak and giving me a chance to win $200.
Thanks, Hager.
Thank you.
That's cool.
Don't we have one more sponsor?
We do, and that sponsor is...
HMC Architects.
Well, let's hear what HMC has to say this time.
When visiting a college for the first time, prospective students know within 13 seconds if it's a match. so understanding their needs is a crucial part of our design process. Hi, I'm James Sink.
And I'm Jonathan Orr. We're higher education designers at HMC Architects. We spend a lot of time thinking about how students experience the spaces we design. And with today's cultural shifts, it's important to consider that experience in new ways, ones that value and promote social connectivity, equality, and inclusion.
We're currently transforming Cal Poly Pomona's 61-year-old campus into a cosmopolitan community with the construction of new, modern living student housing. From relaxing living rooms and communal stairway lounges to a contemporary dining hall, the finished campus will offer shared amenities and flexibility.
We've reimagined the traditional bathroom model in favor of gender-inclusive restrooms for increased self-esteem, comfort, and safety. And we're creating community, connection, and adaptability with an intimate environment where students can interact and make lifelong connections.
At HMC Architects, we believe that progressing to meet students' needs will not only benefit their academic and personal experiences, but also shape their world and enrich their lives. To learn more or to become part of our story, visit hmcarchitects.com.
Welcome to Archispeak, the podcast that talks about what it's like to work in the profession of architecture.
Welcome to episode 123 of the Archispeak podcast. I'm Neil Pan.
I'm Evan Troxel.
And I'm Cormac Phelan.
Hey, this episode we just wanted to start off real quick and thank NCARB for including Archispeak podcast as one of their 13 best podcasts for architects. We noticed that happened, I think, in the last month or so. And we have a lot of great company on their list. So head on over. We'll put the link in the show notes so you can see everybody who's included. They've definitely upped their game since the last time they published this list. They've added 5 more shows to the list, which is cool to see. The list is growing as far as just different players out there in the podcasting world for architecture. So a lot of good resources, a lot of good shows, and we're just happy to be a part of it. So thanks, NCARB, for that.
Yeah, that's really cool, actually. I like that. I think the last time they did this, at least that we were aware, was like 3 years ago, 2014.
Yeah, I think so. It's been a while. So 5 more shows in 4 years.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
How I found out about it was somebody put the link on my Facebook account, and they were like, "Hey, you're famous." I'm like, "Hey, I didn't even know about this, but cool, thanks."
Yeah, I think all of us got messaged about it from somebody else, not even each other.
Exactly,
because none of us knew about it.
What was interesting was I heard about it, like you said, right after the article was published. And then what did you guys not experience this too? I think there was like an email blast that went out maybe a week or so back in like maybe mid to late August, because I got text from like 2 of my friends going, "Hey, congratulations, blah, 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 blah." And I was like, "Oh, that wasn't that like a month?" I had to go double check. I'm like, did they do a new one or something? Because I was like, yeah, great, thank you. That happened like a month and a half ago. And they're like, no, we just found out through this email. So I don't know. That was really cool.
I never knew about it even then. I didn't know about it a month ago.
What's good for NCARB is people are clicking on the links in their email.
So keep up those emails, NCARB.
And they specifically, in their blog post here, they specifically mention episodes 36 and 97. Licensure at Graduation was 36. And How to Survive Architecture School was 97. So that was also kind of cool that they particularly they talked about those episodes as far as being resources for people who are going through licensure.
And we should probably apologize for the poor audio quality in those early episodes.
Who knows? Yeah,
I think we were actually better than
how bad it was.
It was the early ones that I think might have actually even dropped off iTunes that were painful.
Because that was year 2. Yeah, episodes, I think anything back beyond 100 doesn't show up in the iTunes feed, but you can get to them through the website.
Yeah, that's true.
You don't have to.
We should.
But yeah, you don't have to.
We should make that clear. All the episodes are available on the website at archispeakpodcast.com, but in iTunes. For some reason, after 100 episodes, everything past 100, so you probably couldn't go back to like episode 20 right now on iTunes.
Right.
But you can find it, though, on our site, so you can listen to it that way.
Or, Neil, if you do the math, I'm thinking that since this is 123, we're episode 23 won't be heard.
Very likely.
Hey, good math.
Math
is hard.
My daughter can attest to that. She's in 5th grade. Math is hard.
All right, so I was thinking we could talk a little bit. Well, a couple things. First one was that thanks to LinkedIn, I mean, how would we know how long we've worked somewhere if we didn't have LinkedIn reminding us and all the people giving us congratulations and like you said, Cormac, the participation trophy of the modern era here is LinkedIn reminders. But 10 years I've been at HMC now, and I thought it just made me kind of reflect a little bit on what is 10 years like in the profession of architecture, because just like everything else, we kind of just get caught up in the day-to-day or the latest project or whatever. And so it was just kind of neat to go back and think about what's happened over the last 10 years. And I don't want to get too deep into it, but I did pull up the list of projects. Deltec is good at one thing, at least. And I could actually pull up a list of all the projects that I've worked on. And then I actually went through it and deleted out all the lines that were things that I was listed on but didn't work on or participated in minimally, because I don't think that counts. So it came up, it was between 60 and 70, like right in there, probably around 65 projects in the last 10 years that I've had a decent part in. Obviously, none of them are sole sourced, but
that's pretty amazing.
It's kind of that's a lot, right? I didn't know what that number was going to be. I had no idea, and I don't really think about it on a normal day-to-day basis, but that's a lot of projects to be.
Think about the
we
climate
build a lot.
10 years ago. What was going on? I mean, we were entering into the recession, and a lot of people were lucky to have jobs, lucky to have projects to work on. We were, let's see, so 10 years, 07.
Do the math, Art.
I know. I'm trying. I'm trying. You know, I got into architecture so I didn't have to do math. But it was my last year in Florida. Things were we were starting to sweat things, because I know, probably with you, because you were working with developers and stuff like that. I'm just assuming we were feeling it a year. I mean, because everybody's like, oh, 08. We felt it in 07. Mm-hmm. We were, because we worked with some developers who were trying to get things off the ground and stuff like that. And it sounded great. It was some awesome pie in the sky stuff. Still to this day has never happened, but we started feeling it then. And then really, like at the end of 07, we were just sweating bullets, hoping that we had one commercial project. It was just me and my buddy that when we were working on our own, and we had one commercial project that basically floated us for just a little while longer, until it was to the point where we looked at the account and we're like, $14. What do we do? And so to think about it, how many projects was that you've worked on since?
About 65.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And it also shows kind of like what the turnaround's been since us unburying ourselves from the 08 misfortunes.
Yeah. It's funny. We just pinned up our entire kind of SOQ on the wall for our higher ed practice. So every project that we basically include as our statement of qualifications for going after new projects. And I asked our practice leader, Ken, I'm like, hey, where's that first project I worked on? Is that up here? Because I didn't see it. And he's like, yep, it's right over there. And it was this little nursing addition that we did at San Bernardino, which is a CSU. Actually, no, it's not CSU. It's Cal State San Bernardino. And very first project. And the reason they had me work on it was because I had just come from a place that we did basically, it's like store fixtures and interior design for like sports and skateboarding and stuff like that. So we did design all the way to manufacturing of basically built-in furniture and
Nice.
stuff. And so this project had a huge component of that. And I was actually in the K-12 studio at the time, and this is a higher ed project. And it was the very first project that I did. I guess it was kind of like a foreshadowing of where I was going to end up in the firm, at least 10 years out. But it was kind of fun to see that up on the wall as part of the statement of qualifications of, this is something we do. So it was like a bunch of nursing stations. It was for training nurses. We're going through the nursing program at Cal State San Bernardino. And it had this oval desk in the middle with computers all around it where everybody, it's not a desk, it's like stations. And so it was like this giant built-in casework, total custom casework thing. And that was my very first design project when I came back to HMC. That was kind of neat to see. And then thinking through all the scope of all the different projects that I've worked on, there was some competitions in there, real pie in the sky ideas stuff. And then there's like that first one, just real nuts and bolts and getting down into the details of it to where I am now. And going through, I guess this kind of leads me into the next topic, which was, I was just thinking about the different positions and titles that I've held throughout 10 years going through the design track in our company. And HMC is probably not unlike most firms, at least medium to large size firms, where there's tracks and titles that lead you as you're professionally developed throughout the time that you spend there. And so I started out as I want to say a designer too. I actually don't remember my first title. But when I was thinking, I used to be at HMC too. So Neil, you might be able to speak to this a little bit too, since this is your second stint at the company that you're working for as well. But I started out way back then as an intern. So I've basically gone at HMC from intern to senior designer. But I don't think I would have been able to do that if I would have stayed there in those gap years. And I was gone for a good amount of time, 7, 8, 9 years, something like that. And so I went off and did a bunch of other things, but I don't think that I would have become a designer if I would have stayed there, because everybody gets trained in design in school, but we all know that that is a very small percentage of actual positions in architecture companies. Right? Especially medium to large size companies. It's a very small percentage of the overall population. I mean, it's maybe 10%. It's probably less. It's probably 5%. It just depends. And so when you think about, I think this is just kind of an interesting thing. It was like I had to leave to come back as a designer because I learned a lot of skills and other people left in the meantime. And then I came back in and got hired in that position. And then I've worked my way up from there. But I don't, like I was saying, I don't know. It's possible that I would have become a designer, but I don't know because there are so few positions in that track, if you will. And so I guess what I was going to say about we're not unlike other firms is that we have a design track, a management track, and a technical track. And that's kind of how they divide things up. And something that I've been thinking a lot about lately is not kind of making people fit within a column, especially nowadays where there are so many things that you can do in architecture. You're not just going to be a designer or a manager or a project architect. There are so many other things now with computational design and interiors and lighting, and it doesn't matter. There's so many things that you could. And so what I'm starting to think about now and try to put together kind of a framework is identifying people based on their skills and then kind of trying to match those up with opportunities. So either opportunities for professional development or real project opportunities that people need experience with. So I don't know what you guys think about that generally, but I just think it's kind of an interesting thing to think about and maybe reframe how we've always done it, because architecture is so steeped in tradition. Like, this is how we've done it, this is how we're going to do it, that sometimes it just takes a completely different perspective to start to break down those old rules that maybe don't apply anymore. Are you also
using this as a tool to maybe frame how you go after projects and staff them in your RFP responses?
Yes, because those typically end up being the same people all the time, because they're the ones with the experience. So because they have the experience, they go on the proposal. You're also going after some
high-level projects and things like that they want to see experience. They want to understand that the team that's going to be servicing them is the right team, the qualified team, the team with experience. And this is a good way to chart that as well.
Yeah. I mean, Neil, with your previous experience, did when you came back, are you doing something completely different than when you were before?
Not really. And I think part of that reason is that the way our firm works, we don't work on the scope or size of projects that you guys do in your university work or school work. And so the projects are maybe smaller, and that's not true for everybody, right? But the way our firm is kind of set up is more in market sectors. So we have people working on commercial stuff, or what we call, I think, neighborhood residential or multifamily residential, that the project scopes are getting bigger. But more back to what you were saying, the track I was on, and maybe the way the firm kind of always worked was more, and I've described this before as maybe project manager driven. And what I mean by that is when I started, I don't know, I was like drafter 1 and drafter 2, drafter 3, or whatever the terminology was. And I kind of worked up along that path to eventually managing my own project. So not only was I maybe managing maybe me and one or two other people, but I was also doing part of that, a percentage of the drawings, I should say. And so probably what's different now from when I had left was I probably spent more time drafting on projects back then than I do now. Mm-hmm. But I was still in a level of essentially like a high level job captain / project manager at the time, where I had several clients of my own, and they would call and we would do projects together, and that's sort of what I was doing. And now since I'm back, I'm kind of doing the same thing, although coming back this time, I'm an architect, and that's where I'm at. And they have higher levels there, senior architect, senior this or whatever. I'm not there yet, but to me, it's sort of a title. I think you had mentioned to us offline before when we were kind of talking, exploring topic ideas, that does the title match, say, the skill level? And for me, at least right now, I'm titled as an architect, and that's what my title is. And yet what I'm doing is very similar to what I was doing. In my case, it was a 14-year gap between when I was there the first time and coming back. And so I'm essentially kind of doing the same thing. I'm managing projects, and now at a level where I've got 3 or 4 people working for me to do these different projects. And so it's not that different for me, but I had risen to a point, maybe this is where it was different for you, is I spent almost 8 years there before. And when I left, I was already at the level of basically managing projects with my own clients. And so when I've come back, I've kind of slipped back into that sort of role for them as well.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a natural progression, right? To draw less the longer you've been in the
unless you're on a track. Well, I mean, maybe it is for some people, but some people maybe not. It certainly has been for me, and I'm at the point now where I'm perfectly fine with that.
Mm.
Yeah. Well,
doing something
part
wrong.
of it too is just this. Yeah, because that's always the struggle, right? Is staying involved in projects and drawing things and making things, and versus managing processes. So it's like I feel like that's a struggle for a lot of people who are getting up into leadership positions, who still want to be involved in projects, and then there's like this tug of war going on because the leadership is a full-time job. There's so much to do and so much to be mindful of, and watching over like the health of the company, versus getting so deep into a project that it's hard to have an eye on both at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think that's why what I mean by that's kind of a natural progression, because I feel like if you really are moving into leadership, if you're not moving into leadership, then it's probably not a progression there where you're going to be doing less over time. But if you are, then you're going to be, I think, kind of naturally doing other things to ensure the wellness of the company versus the drawing on
I'm
project.
somewhere in between right now, because I'm still very heavily involved in the projects and on not only on design level but production level as well, making decisions as a team about what we're doing and how we're doing it, and on the design. I mean, there's definitely times with the types of projects I'm working on right now where we're designing them together, and we do it as a team, or one, two of us. And that's a lot of
fun. Collaborate.
Yes, we collaborate, exactly. And I enjoy the hell out of that. So I don't want to leave that part of it. I do. So I'm a little in between, and it's working. It's kind of crazy sometimes, and there's definitely at times where I have to let some of that go. It's like, hey, go. But the way I approach it, and the way I trying to think the right term, give it to or kind of the way I try and have the team see it is, this is also their opportunity to do some design work, right? It's like, here's your opportunities. And we kind of, I almost want to make it a little bit of a joke, is that all we do in school is design. We learn how to design, and then we get out and we don't do any design. And so the joke is, hey, guess what? You get to do design. This is what you went to school for. But to give it to them.
Fun stuff. Oh, you're doing the fun stuff.
Oh, no.
Now you get to do the fun stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, you get to put your ideas, your fragile ideas, up on the wall and have people rip them down, and you get to be vulnerable.
That's fun, right?
And now you're getting paid for it, so it's a little better.
Yeah.
So I still try and keep in both worlds at the same time, which can be a little frantic.
It is really fun
but it's not much different, since you were talking about what you've been doing for 10 years, and I won't go into all mine, but when you're on your own or working as a sole practitioner, you're doing all of those things, right? Not only are you concerned about the health of the firm, but you have to do the design work, you have to do the contracts, you have to do the managing of the project in general, and also the contractors and subs, and you have the whole gamut of all of that. And so for me, I'm taking all of those skills that I learned for 7+ years on my own, and now applying it to where I'm at now. I think definitely you mentioned you were on you weren't sure if you become a designer if you had stayed there. I feel like when I left and then have come back, I've come in with a very different perspective on how we should do things, or what we do, right?
Totally.
And I don't think I would have that perspective if I had stayed there the whole time.
But somehow, is it harder sometimes, especially like the first job after working for yourself for so long? How hard is it to kind of let go of the control that you used to wield as a sole practitioner, and let other people help you, or let other people do things that normally you would do?
That's a good question. I think to a certain extent, I had gotten to a point in my own firm where I actually needed help. And that was, people can go back and listen to that episode where we talked about that a little bit, and I'll research it and maybe have a link for that in the show notes. But it's to answer your question.
Dawn of
Pan. That was it. I think I needed that help anyway. So actually having that help is a little bit of a stress relief for me, is that I needed to go
you can rely on other people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's good. But you got to admit, or at least it was with me, that it was still kind of hard to let go of control, only because you were so reliant on yourself to make sure everything happened that I sort of still felt like I needed to do that. And it really needed to take that first firm that I worked for after working for myself to kind of almost beat that out of me, is rely on your team, rely on others, let them help you out. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to stay there till midnight every single day. Things like that it was, for me, it was tough, a tough transition, but it happened. And I actually think that I'm far better for it, to be able to actually help. And that's what kind of worked me toward being more on kind of mentoring and things like that, that was able to kind of say, okay, look, you have other people helping you. Let them do it. Stop trying to overwork yourself. Stop trying to kill yourself on something that literally other people can do.
Yeah, there definitely was an adjustment period. There were some things that I think for what hit me the most was I was concerned about being efficient, very efficient when you're on your own, right? Because there's only so many hours in the day.
Exactly.
And you have to be in you, and that influences your decisions. Like, how much time do I spend making sure that something's on the right layer? Let's put it that way. If it prints okay, it's fine. Move on, right? And I think I had an adjustment period at the office when I first started back again, about worrying about making sure things were done just right, technically, or in the computer, right?
Well, yeah, because somebody else has got to pick it up and understand it.
And so, but yeah, so that was probably my most difficult thing, to try and understand that, okay, certain people have what they want to do and they want to make sure it's perfect, and you let them do that. And so part of my job is to make sure that I manage everybody's skills with appropriate tasks and give them a bit of a stretch at the same time, so that keeps it interesting for them. So it was slipping more back into that role and understanding that was probably the adjustment period that I went through. But understanding what their skills were and then mentoring those skills and letting them grow.
I was going to say, I didn't want to derail it from what we were originally talking about, but it is kind of interesting to see how we transition from working on our own to working for a firm that they put us in leadership positions where we do have to work on helping develop other people's experience and skills so that they can fit into this, working their way up from intern to architect to designer to principals and things like that. And so I just remembered how the interestingly difficult transition, only because I guess I was a little hypercritical of the way I was like, I'd never do it that way. You could be more efficient if you did it this way. And it really took me a little bit of time just to get over myself, I guess, in a way.
How you knew it. Yeah. You could do it all, right? That I think that's a tough transition for a lot of people, because they know, you can do it, but you don't know if they can do it. And you definitely don't know if they'll do it like you would do it. And so those lead to those people not feeling like you trust them and not feeling like they're getting opportunities, and that's harmful to the culture.
It is. And that was the thing that, like I said, it really had, it was a self-adjusting transition for me, because I was so used to doing everything for myself, and I trusted myself to get things done correctly and efficiently, or at least correctly and efficiently in my mind. But
well, I feel like it's a lot like being a father in our case, right? Because you wouldn't do everything for your kids, because if you did, they would never learn how to do anything. And I feel like it's exactly the same thing in the office. It's like you have to let them do it. You have to let them fail and say that it's okay, and we're going to do it better the next time. And here's what we learned from that. It's exactly the same thing. It's just not as it's not quite that, I don't want to put anybody down. I want to tell everybody that they're a child, but it's like that kind of a relationship where you have to foster and enable people to do those things so that they feel like they have the space to try it out, or even to try something new that you don't know. And I think that's kind of getting back to my original thesis here of, we are not a title, we are a collection of skills, or we're a collection of things that we're interested in and passionate about that we want to get to, and we don't necessarily fit
one of the
column.
Things that I started this new project out on is asking, like, what do you want to get out of this project? What new skills do you want to learn? What things have you not done on projects in the past that you would really like to work on and kind of help foster your experience, education, and skills? And
Yep.
Sitting down and just asking them frankly, what do you want out of this project? What do you want to do? And when they're saying, well, I'd like to do some more design work, or I'd like to work on detailing or this or that, then that helps me when I'm setting up the task list of who's doing what and who's going to be responsible for what, to kind of assigning them parts of the project that are going to help foster that growth.
I think that's just a leadership skill in general on project teams. Every project's going to have different opportunities. So what can you do to get people outside of their comfort zone, to stretch them? I've definitely witnessed that, some people doing that really well in our company. And those are the people that stretch their team to take on something that they're not used to doing, and being right there to catch them if they fall. But that is where people can really show you that they can do whatever you ask them to do. It's happened time and time again.
We have this really gifted project architect on the team who he's unfortunately got pigeonholed a lot into doing visualization. And so he's always doing a lot of the SketchUp work. And a lot of times it's pretty frustrating, not only just for him, which I'm sure it's extremely frustrating, but for other team members, that we've got this kid who's really smart, really talented, and should be working on more things for his own growth, but he's kind of stuck in visualization. And sometimes that never stops, even into like CDs. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure, both he and I, when we were talking about it, is like, how do we get you out of that and get you more involved? Mm-hmm. And one of the things, he's very analytical. And I was like, how do we get him into the intuitive and push him a little bit more? Because he's very systematic about the way he does things, and which is great because he's so damn organized, which is fantastic because he's task oriented and he's organized. But I kind of want him to loosen up a little bit and have fun with design, and really get in there and do some things. And I think that this is just the first step. This project is just the first step in kind of getting him to be, because I think with him being involved with visualization, he's also a really talented designer. Unfortunately, he's never had the opportunity to really dig into design. And I think that this is a baby step, because this was a project that kind of everybody got pulled into and had already started going before a lot of us got pulled into the project. And so the machine was already rolling. But I think that if we can use this as a tool to kind of like push him forward, then he knows what to expect the next project and the next project. And then it starts to snowball into growth of where I think he can be and should be, as long as he's given the opportunity. And I think it's absolutely where the change in the culture of having kind of this combined architectural studio, kind of having kind of this principal designer as kind of like a guiding tool, not necessarily doing the design, and letting a lot of the project team members do more design work. We're setting the mechanism in place to really kind of help everybody be a far more rounded designer, detailer, manager, all these things. So I think it's in place. We just need to start recognizing, and that's where I was saying, sitting down and talking to them and like really kind of pulling out from them, what do you want to do? What do you want to get out of this? You have a lot of good strengths that you already have a good level of experience and skill in. Where are your blanks? What can we do to fill in?
So Evan, I wanted to come back to something you mentioned earlier about skills and titles, because I think for firms in general, we always have to give a title to somebody, right? We have to describe, in essence, what their job responsibility is, or level of responsibility, or on that RFP, we have to say, here's this person, he is the project manager, he is the job captain, he is or she is the principal. We have all these people, and we have to identify what their roles are. And that doesn't always I see project manager thrown out around a lot, because it's such a large, encompassing title. There's so many things you can do in there. But if you've identified somebody as drafter 1 or drafter 2 or designer 1, designer 2, I guess I feel like it's a struggle, right? Firms have to define people in a role, whether it's for pay scale or for that RFP, who's the project team, what are their roles, and yet at the same time, that doesn't always define well what they're either capable of doing now or maybe in the future, right?
No.
You mentioned at the beginning how you don't think you might have been on that designer track if you had stayed there.
Right.
So if you get onto that and identified, or Cormac, you were talking about the one person is just doing visualization, how do they break free of these titles that tend to anchor us into a particular role?
This is exactly the nut of what I'm trying to crack. And so I'm trying to develop a tool that will allow people to kind of assess themselves and on a categorical basis, self-assess the level of time that they spend doing a particular thing. So what that does is it captures what their current skills maybe are, and then it gives them kind of the opportunity at the end of this form. And so it's not difficult. I mean, it's 8 different categories that are kind of standard. Here's the different aspects to what it takes to put together a project. What do you do? And then at the end, it says, okay, well, what else? What else do you do that people need to know about? And right now, it's not like software type stuff. So it's not that fine grained, but it's more like, do you teach? Or are you interested in leadership? It's kind of like, again, kind of broad categories, but things that people need to know about. And so now you're not being defined by somebody else, because this is what I was finding was, your leadership sits in a staffing meeting, is trying to figure out, okay, what's coming? Who are we going to put on that? How much availability do they have? Who do we have in our bullpen, right? It's totally that scenario over and over and over again.
Well, wait a minute.
And those people look at...
Did you just use a sports reference?
Yes.
Whoa.
Crazy.
Whoa. Stop the recorder. Wow. Mark this down on your calendar.
It is an office term as well, though. It's a systems office firm as well.
Okay, so that explains where Evan got the term from, because he's not watching baseball.
He was
here.
totally
In
not
fact,
a
he
sports
probably
analogy.
thinks that's a soccer term, right?
No.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. My mind was blown there.
A lot of times we're looking at who we've got based on their job title, right? So we know we need a project coordinator. We need a project manager. And all of those things, while are fine at really broad term defining, they do not tell you the skills that those people actually have. Mm-hmm. And so you could have a project manager who's actually very skilled at detailing, or they're very skilled at construction administration, whereas you could have another project manager who's never done CA, right? And so the idea is to understand, and we kind of already know who our people are, and we do have these relationships, but this gives those people who we're talking about the opportunity to say where they are currently. And then what I want to do is take this exact same thing, but say, okay, in the next 3 to 5 years, where do you want to be? And then look at the delta between those. So you basically have the same categories both times, but you could actually potentially see huge shifts because of people's personal interests. And then you have the ability to have a dialogue about the differential between those two things and say, I'm here, I want to get to there. How are we going to make that happen? How are we going to match that up with upcoming project opportunities?
Right.
How are we going to do that in our studio or firm-wide? I mean, that's where something like this gets really powerful, is that we start talking about it. I mean, HMC has 9 offices, and there's times where there's somebody in one office who's doing nothing, and there's the other office which is completely overloaded. How do you start to balance that without going through the painful process of hiring new people? You've already got talent, right? So how can we just better use those people on an ad hoc basis? And it's hard to know because you haven't worked with those people. You don't trust them. You don't have that kind of inherent comfortability with those people because you don't work with them. So at least give us something to go off where we can see, this person's really good at computational design. We can use that on this project. Let's try it out. Let's try that person out. And it gives you the ability to start to build teams based on need rather than just positions kind of filling in the slots.
That's actually a great opportunity for your firm to not only use the resources they have, but also not waste the resources that they have.
Exactly. Because I think it goes back to what Neil said earlier, right? You struggle to want to still be working on the projects.
Right.
And I guess what I mean by that is if you don't use it, you lose it.
Right. But then there's the opportunity that a firm has in the case that you were talking about with, because we're starting to kind of dip our toe into doing the same thing where we're sharing resources across the 3 offices that we have a lot more than had been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Like our DC office is going after larger projects that they may not have the staff for, but the Baltimore office does, or maybe the Arizona office has a little bit of extra time with people that can work on the project, but also have an interest in that type of project that they haven't had an opportunity to do in their office.
Yep.
And it's good. It's not necessarily just good for the person or the project or the office, but I mean, it's honestly good for the profession because we're starting to enrich a lot more people with a lot more project experience that otherwise they just wouldn't get. I mean, think about this, especially for us. So we have a remote office in Austin, Texas, which is more kind of our base for sustainability, and they kind of hop between all of the other offices. But we have an actual office in Phoenix, Arizona, in Baltimore, and in DC. Now, Baltimore and DC do tend to work on similar projects, though the Baltimore office tends to work on nationwide projects and a few international projects. DC seems to be a little bit more regional with few outliers here, but they kind of have similar project types. But somebody in Arizona could work on an East Coast project that otherwise they would never work on in their career.
Right.
And actually are going to be so much better off as a professional because now they have not just their regional work, but they've got national work in as part of it. And it just, I see the potentials.
Yeah, there's a huge potential there, and it is hard. I mean, there's no denying that remote work is difficult in a creative field like this, where you really do need people's full attention for long periods of time, and that's hard to do when you can't see them. But I think because of technology advances, this is becoming more and more of a non-issue, and it also does require us to trust our people.
Right.
One way to do that is to understand who they are without ever having met them. And so that's when something like this starts to come into play. And Neil, back to your thing, like where you do kind of need to tell, you need to have something that identifies what that person is or does in the company. Unfortunately, I don't see that getting any easier. I feel like the titles that are out there are only going to get more broad. And by broad, I just mean there's going to be more of them.
Well, instead of maybe more of them, maybe we broaden their definition by saying there's strengths in different areas. You had mentioned a project manager hasn't done CA, right? So maybe you're a project manager, but you identify the skill level based on different categories underneath that broader term. So we might have a designer or a drafter 1 or a drafter 2 or something, but they have skills in visualization or something like that, but not in detailing, right? And so it's almost like you're defining each title with additional information that shows their skill level so that you can use that skill level to either create a team with different skills, because you don't want to say put 3 drafter 1s on a project where none of them they're all visualization skills, but none of them have any drafting skills or detailing skills, right? So I like your idea of broadening the definitions of titles with this second layer of skills so that everybody can use that to say, okay, I'm a project manager, but I haven't done a lot of CA. So that's a skill level that I need to bring up if that's your desire, right? And so that you could do that. So it's almost like creating this category system or something underneath the title, right? Because I still think you need to have the title. Maybe that's just old school of me, but I do like your idea of trying to broaden that with skill level, because that helps broaden the conversation. It seems every review you're in, you're talking about what you want to do, what's the skill levels you want to improve on, or something like that. But it's not officially part of, say, your title. It's nothing that's kind of documented. So if you had created this documentation for that, I think that would be very valuable to firms to use.
I think what happens here is we have this internal language that is semi agreed upon across the entire profession, which allows us to do comparative analysis on what people's pay should be, right? And so you can compare a PM at Air St. Gross, and you can compare a PM at Dahlin, and you can compare a PM at HMC.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of need that. And so this is kind of eye-opening for people in school, potentially. Like, there's all of this stuff, this layer of stuff that we're kind of trying to wade through. And on like a parallel universe, there's like a designer who is totally passionate about regenerative design. And then you've got another one who's totally passionate about maybe computation and programming. And they are not alike at all, these two people, let's just say for this example. But going back to that kind of thick layer of comparative analysis, they're designers, right, to the industry.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
We need a designer on this project.
Right.
And so I don't know how you kind of square all this, because there are people who I would never want to be a project manager. I will only be a designer. But really, there's so much more nuance to it than that. And I guess that's kind of where people are getting stuck. And like you said, Neil, maybe you're just stuck with this title thing, because, and what I mean by they're going to get broader is, like, people want something that says what they actually do, not just a broad categorization because it's not good enough.
Well, how do you?
No, it's okay.
Sorry.
I'm thinking out loud right now, because I don't know how you make it all work yet, but I think that it's happening. There's tons of computational designers out there, and there's tons of architect fours, and nobody knows what either one of those things are outside of our industry. And so when you list them on an RFP, you have to have this blurb, right? And that's where it starts to get personal. And that's where you start to talk about their relationships and their experience and stuff like that. And I guess part of it is you're actually going to have to get more personal with everybody, because that's really what this is about. This is about breaking free of the categories and being good at a lot of different things. And that's what makes you who you are. And this project has these opportunities and needs. And so we're going to place you there because you're the best fit. And what that does is it can either pull, and this is kind of, we've always had this, you either get real deep and expert in something and you go all in for that one thing, or you're a really well-rounded architect and you can do a lot of different things, and depending on the need, you could play a lot of different roles. I don't think that's going to change, but I don't see us sticking with 3 or 5 different titles anymore. I really see it getting a lot more nuanced than that, and allowing people to express who they are through some weird-ass title, and that's going to have to be okay. Yeah.
Listening to you talk about that, I was thinking, how do you quantify? So, and I'm thinking out loud now because I'm trying to formulate how I'm asking this question. But so what we do is, it's more of role-based experiences that we've broken down everybody's title and what their responsibilities are for each project. What does the project or what does the principal in charge do on the project? What does the project manager do on the project? What does the project architect and project designer, I'm kind of going down the list, do on the project? And then so on all the way down. And so it's transparent that everybody on the project knows what everybody's role is. They know what the QA QC guy does. They know what the spec writer does. They know what the sustainability person does. They know what all of these things are. And so if they've got an idea of what, if they want to either move up within the titles, or I can't believe I just did air quotes, but if they want to move up within the titles, or if they want to do other things within the project, they know what the responsibilities are that they need to do to perform that other job or that other role. And so we're able to quantify what you do on the project, based off of the title and your responsibilities to have that title. But if you want to be a project architect, or if you want to be a project designer or a project manager, these are the other skills that you need to possess to be able to efficiently do this job task. And I think that's helpful in people gauging their level of knowledge of contribution to the project. Do I have the skill set to be able to do a project designer's role? Do I have the skill set to be able to do this, spec writer's role? And then it's up to them to really kind of ask or seek out the ability to gain that knowledge and that experience. And so I'm just curious how, in kind of like this analysis that you're looking at, how you guys are doing that. I mean, do you quantify each person's role or each title with a set of responsibilities, or is it just kind of, okay, well, you can do detailing, so you're going to be architect 1 or architect 2 type thing, or drafting 1 or 2 or whatever. I don't know if we necessarily have roles specific to that, but
right,
because really there's kind of like, I guess it's more of like a senior project architect who sort of manages the consultants, the staff on the project team within the office, and kind of like all of the other roles within it. And then there's the project manager who kind of manages the project architect and the client. And then there's, kind of going up from there. And so I'm trying to figure out how to ask you the question of how you quantify the gaining of all of these skills and knowledges in your office, kind of like how we're doing with ours, is setting these kind of like rules and kind of a template of, this is the knowledge that you need to perform this particular task or role.
I think it's real hard to answer that question, because I think a lot of people do it differently. This topic is getting way into the weeds. I know.
Yeah, it is.
It's probably not too interesting for a lot of people, but I think that a lot of mentorship needs to happen. And that's what's nice about these larger projects, is you do have teams where there's a lot of crosstalk and there's lots of opportunities for learning.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I think a good role of a PM on a project in management is a skill. It's not something you get you don't become just by working there for long enough.
It's not a title. It's not just
a
title.
Good manager looks for opportunities for people and gets them out of their comfort zone and helps them perform those things so that they gain the experiences. And so, like, we don't have our senior PA managing consultants. We have our project coordinator doing that if we think that they're up to the task and can do it well, or there's a good enough opportunity and a safe enough environment for them to do that and learn the ropes as they go along. So we're trying to kind of infuse those things that have typically been reserved for more seasoned people to lower people on that project totem pole, if you want to, I hate to say it that way, but
I know.
with less experience, so that they get it. Otherwise, if people just keep doing the same things, then that pigeonholing thing is what kills morale. It kills culture, and they go somewhere else, so that they can come back later as a designer or whatever they want to be. And I mean, that's really the goal, is to avoid that. There's plenty of opportunities in these firms to do anything you want. You can't always convince management that is the case. And you can't always convince individuals that that's the case, because they've seen bad behavior.
True.
Or it's never been modeled for them. And so they feel like, to really do what I want, I've got to go somewhere else. And that's a shame. I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to avoid.
Right. Agreed.
That sounds like a great spot to end this.
Yeah, it probably is.
I think so. All right. Well, hey, before we go, we'd like to thank our episode sponsors. First, we have ARCAT. Check out all the features they offer at arcat.com. Next, we'd like to thank Hagar Companies, Make sure you visit them at booth 907 at Construct, which is being held September 14th through 15th in Providence, Rhode Island. And make sure you let them know you heard about them on the Archispeak podcast. We'd appreciate that. And if you listen to the first part of the show, there's a little secret in there that you might win something. So rewind back and listen to that.
It's worth your money.
It's worth your time. Listen to that.
Worth your time.
Exactly. We'd also like to thank HMC Architects for their support. To learn more or become part of their story, visit them at hmcarchitects.com. And remember to visit our website at archispeakpodcast.com for links to our catalog of episodes and to sign up for our newsletter, which includes links to everything we mentioned in the episode. And between the episodes, join the conversation on our Facebook page or Twitter. Links to everything can be found at the archispeakpodcast.com. And thanks for listening, everyone. And make sure you stay subscribed, and we'll catch you next time.
All right, see you.
See you guys.
I joined the choir to sing. They're all competing for some other thing. I joined the choir to sing. I joined the choir to sing. They're all competing for some other thing. I joined the choir to sing. Join the choir to sing. I give good love at the bank. Enough blood to fill up my gas tank. I give good love at the bank. Enough blood to fill up my gasoline tank. Oh, I serve my nation under God. Service my city with all that I've got. But when I'm running, pleasure is here. So I run, I'm meant to run, this is clear.